At LSI, we don't just follow trends, we help shape the future. Welcome to Behind the Win, the podcast where we break down the biggest moves in tech, innovation, leadership, and government contracting. Here at LSI, we're bringing you exclusive conversations with the minds behind groundbreaking advancements, disruptive strategies, and industry-defining wins. From retail to tech, defense to government solutions. This is where you get the insights to stay ahead. Let's go behind the win.
Welcome to Behind the Win, the podcast that goes inside the minds of leaders shaping business, government, and community innovation. Today's guest is Bill Crim, President and CEO of United Way of Salt Lake. Bill has been at the forefront of building cross-sector partnerships that transform education, strengthen communities, and drive long-term change. From championing cradle-to-career pathways to leading collective impact models that unite business, government, and nonprofits, his work has made Utah a national model for collaboration. Bill, thanks for coming to the show. We appreciate it. Kind of just jump right in to tell our listeners is what are some big things United Way is working on? What are you currently doing with them? Just get them a little bit familiarized with what you're doing at United Way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
And helping us tell our story. Our purpose is really to help every Utahn thrive. Our goal is that ultimately we put ourselves out of business. But there are two challenges that we need to focus on in order for kids and families to thrive. And the first is around basic needs. So we help people who are in crisis connect to services and get their basic needs met. We help the safety net actually work like a safety net. Without us, the awesome, amazing services that Utahns have created in the form of the nonprofit sector operate as 3,000 different isolated programs.
Right.
With us and our 211 service, we connect people through that one number, that one door, to all of the programs offered by those 3,000 organizations. There are actually 10,000 different programs and services offered. And imagine if you just got an eviction notice or your kids are hungry and you don't know where to turn. Trying to figure that out is really, really stressful and sometimes impossible. If all you need to know is I can call 211 and a knowledgeable, caring person will help me get connected to the resources that will help stabilize my family. That's the first thing.
Yep.
The second thing we do is more long-term. Ideally, we can help families thrive in a way that prevents them from needing services like emergency food or emergency shelter. And so we form partnerships with schools and nonprofit organizations that offer a pathway to college and support through post-secondary education. And the goal is you help every kid achieve their potential and they'll have an economically mobile and stable life.
I love that. So, and I think we're going to jump into that a little bit too, because, you guys say education is a promise. So, what does that idea mean to you and the work you guys are doing at United Way?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the potential of education to change one's life, to open up possibilities, and you think about the alternative of not achieving an education or not having that sort of foundation for the future, education is everything. And our view is that it's a promise to oneself. So a young person has to invest in their own education, their own dreams. Their parents have to invest in that education and make a promise to their kids to help them achieve their potential. And we really need the community to make that same promise. If you've been in any school recently, or if you have young people in your life, you know that there are challenges that young people are facing today that many of us didn't face.
Absolutely.
And the complexity of those challenges means that it's not actually reasonable to expect schools to solve all those challenges, whether they're mental health challenges that anyone might face, or whether they're challenges related to poverty and kids showing up to school without having eaten or without having been to the doctor, for example. So in our view, if the community makes the same promise that a kid makes to themselves and a parent makes to their kid, and the school makes, if we're all promising that we are going to deliver the best possible opportunity for kids to succeed, then what happens is you can produce schools that graduate 100% of their kids on a career path. You can produce schools or co-create schools where 100% of kids are reading on grade level. And right now that is not the norm.
What is that? Do you know the percent of in Utah? What is that?
Yeah, the overall graduation rates, I think in the low 90s in the state, 88 to 91%, I think.
Okay.
But in high poverty communities, it's down in the 70s, maybe even a little bit lower.
Right.
In our view, the promise of an education is something everyone deserves, no matter where they grew up, no matter what their zip code is or who their parents are. And so we focus on those communities where the graduation rate might be in the mid 70s, and we make a promise. Every kid has the opportunity to graduate in this school and go on to post-secondary education.
Can that post-secondary, or does it include trade schools, hair schools, different things like that? Because I think what I notice is, and I've got a huge gap in my kids. I have 25, 20, and then I have, a 4-year-old. So, but my 20-year-olds, they went to college for 1 or 2 years, and that I thought that was the path they were going to go on, right? And now they've sort of chosen more of this trade school, like your Davis Arts or Davis Tech and stuff. And so, does it include that too? Not just
100%.
Okay,
100%. Davis Tech and all of the technical colleges are part of this promise as well. Solid Community College, Davis Tech. Our goal in one of our core signature strategies is called Promise Student Advocates. And the goal is to get kids thinking when they are freshmen or even before. What is it that lights your fire? What are you interested in? What are you good at? And develop a success plan around that. And for a lot of kids, it's not a 4-year college. It could be anything.
sure.
Our economy needs, it needs welders, and it needs machinists and customer service workers, et cetera. And we need people to believe that the sky is the limit for themselves. Like, we don't want people to make choices based on the limits that they might see around them. We want people to make choices, kids to make choices based on what they believe their potential is and what their dreams are.
What about, you guys talk about the cradle-to-career framework, right? And it sounds ambitious, but how do you describe it to someone new, or why it's so powerful to what you're doing?
So we would start by just saying, imagine yourself and your own kids when they're young. Like when you have your own child, a baby, and you start to think about their future, you're not just thinking about what do they need today. Like, a lot of parents will open up a My 529 college savings account right when their children are born. And they're thinking about, long before their kids go to elementary school, they're thinking about, where is the best opportunity for my child, and what does my child need to grow? They're thinking, long before their children go to college, they're thinking about what their kids want to do. And so our idea is, let's create that environment for everybody.
Right.
Let's help every parent start knowing about and thinking about, what are the options for my kid from the moment they're born. So in Clearfield, for example, we have a program called Baby in You, Promise Baby in You. And it's a program for parents of infants, toddlers, and expecting mothers. And it's for the parents, not just the kids. And the idea is we have a 9-week course where experts in early childhood development come in and talk to parents, experts in community resources and education and planning for the future come in and basically help parents understand, like, the full breadth of what their kid needs and how to recognize challenges if there are those, and what's available in the community. And when parents graduate from Promise Baby in You, their kids are on a new path. Often their kids are now on this path that doesn't have limits. It's like, we know our kids are gonna they are gonna grow up in a community where we know other parents and we are looking out for our kids, where we set high expectations for our kids. We know in Clearfield, our kids are going to go to what's called a Promise Community School. And in that school, there will be resources for parents and kids that have challenges. There will be high expectations for every kid, and there will be this kind of seamless system of support for families. And when they finish elementary school, they're going to continue on in a community school that's a middle school or a junior high, and into high school. And this continuum of support from cradle to career really is about linking all of the things that any parent provides for their kids if they have the resources. And in some communities, we have to weave together that system.
Oh my gosh, I love that, because I think it is. It's just, and it's not people aren't miseducated, they're uneducated, right? They don't know that, like your 9-week course, I probably would have taken because I had a 20-year gap in between having kids and was in my mid 40s,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So because my first two, when you say from the My 529, I didn't do that. I didn't even know about that. Now this one, we did it since the day he was born,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So just the
So
information.
much of it's about awareness. And, Utah ranks very high nationally in terms of something called social capital.
Mhm.
So compared to other states, many of us live in neighborhoods and in social groups where we know other parents and they started a 529 for their kid, or, they know, who the best teachers in a school are, et cetera, et cetera. Some families don't have that social network, and it's incredibly important. So one of the other advantages of the Promise infrastructure is that it builds that social capital so that families can look out for each other and people have somebody to call that's not necessarily, a social service worker somewhere.
Right.
It's a neighbor, it's a friend, it's somebody who will watch your kids when you need it, somebody you can call in an emergency. And we're strengthening that social capital where it exists already, and we're building it where it needs to be built.
And I love that you explain it that way, because I think all the time when people ask about Utah, and growing up here my whole life, but I was like, it's so trendy. Everyone can do it. Everyone knows, everyone's it. But I like that, like the social circle, they all know what's going on, which is a great thing, right? No one's keeping information, but that's very interesting. Where have you seen this early type of learning, community schools and higher education align in ways that have changed outcomes for the students?
So there are 8 of these communities in Utah where the adults in the community, the leaders of school districts, the mayors of the city, the nonprofit and philanthropic leaders and business leaders of a community are working together to make this happen. So we see it in many places in Utah. It exists around the country in many places. But I want to answer your question by saying, when we first started to do this work about 15 years ago, somebody's heard us tell this vision. At the time, it wasn't a story looking back, it was a vision for what if we created a world where this was the norm. And somebody said, that sounds awesome, but it will never work. Like, you can't get people to work together like that. And the poverty in this community is too great, and the challenges are too big, and it's never going to improve reading scores and graduation rates, etc. So that was the default. Where we've seen it work in those 8 communities, the kids in the schools in those communities where the adults work together better, they get better outcomes. That's the first thing.
So you've seen the needle move.
Their reading scores are better. Their math scores are better. Their high school graduation rates are better than similar communities where the adults don't work together that way. In the communities that have been doing it the longest, so in South Salt Lake and Mill Creek in Salt Lake County, South Salt Lake's been doing it by far the longest. It is and was a challenged community. There was a fair amount of poverty there. That community has seen its reading scores consistently trend up. Now, it's not a perfectly straight line, to the moon.
Sure.
But whole community across the board, improving academically, improving in terms of school readiness, improving in terms of graduation rates, and dramatically when a community set out to like look out for its kids and make that promise to its kids, its crime has gone down. Its youth related crime has dropped by 76%, especially in the hours after school. So the dramatic difference of the adults simply saying, we're going to make a promise to kids. We're not going to let kids fall through the cracks. We're going to work together. We're not going to work in silos. We're going to measure what we do and ask ourselves, is it working? And if it's not, we're going to fix it. That kind of simple way of working has transformed multiple communities around the country, several communities in Utah, and it's something any community could do. It's like there's no magic sauce to this. I mean, maybe the collaborative mindset is magic, but everybody has it, or everybody can have it. One last thing is the Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah just released a study about these kinds of place-based, community-based approaches, and it's a great study that people could read on their website, and really it's a roadmap for any community that wants to do this could call us and say, how do we get started? And we would help them.
So, and it's not insane to me that this is so successful, because I feel like what you guys have done is in the private sector, right? We build ecosystems, right? We are into supply chain and logistics, and aerospace and defense. And to make that stronger, we've built everything that core, whatever it is you've defined, an ecosystem around it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's amazing that you guys have taken that, right, and implemented it at a human level. We call them consortiums, whatever you want to call it, but that you have everything that ecosystem needs to thrive.
Yeah.
And then that way, not everyone's having to give more than, effort or et cetera than they have.
Yeah. We don't have to create the wheel
Yep.
1,000 times if we build an ecosystem that operates the way logic and our best aspirations would hope it would.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you share a story that you love where this work directly impacted a student or family or community recently?
Yeah. So I could share many. I want to talk about one of the parents who just graduated from Promise Baby and You, and she stood up in the graduation ceremony, and she talked about how she learned a lot, but what really transformed her life and what she believed would transfer her child's life was the community of support that she now had. So she wasn't just going to a program. She went to a baby college experience, just like some of us went to college and we built friendships that last a lifetime that we rely on. She went to that, and it was her first experience. And what she described as she spoke at the graduation was that her family now had this system of support in this community. And there's this old saying that I don't know where it comes from, that it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
She said, I didn't have a village before I started this, but now I do. And that was super inspiring to me. Another parent who was here in Davis County at a graduation was a father who had a child kind of later in life. He said, my kids grew up before we knew all of this stuff.
Before you had any cool shit out, we didn't.
Exactly. And he said, so I came with my wife to this. I'm so glad I did. I've learned so much about what young people need, about the words that they need to hear, about the simple things parents can do to stimulate brain development. And he said, this is going to change my child's life. I'm so glad I came.
Yeah. And I had a professor, I went to the U as well. So I had a professor in one of my first year that said, it was because this degree I'd got this time was psychology and sociology. And so they had said, that we are taught to do math and English. No one's taught or given emotional intelligence, or yes, how to be a parent, right? How to be a spouse or a significant other or whatever that is. So
Yeah.
it's like education we should have
Yeah.
and should be mandated or required, but isn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Utah is often recognized as a national model for, cross-sector collaboration. And what do you think? And we talked a little bit about with that social groups, but what do you think sets Utah apart?
I do think Utah's history plays into um, the social capital and the collaborative spirit that we have. I think the fact that um, we have uh, you know an infrastructure through the LDS Church in our history that contributes to people knowing each other and connecting. I think that there's a certain amount of just problem solving energy here that maybe I don't know where that comes from, but I think people look around and we've created our institutions in ways that are maybe by design less siloed than other places. I take school districts, for example. Utah has 41 total school districts. I think actually a big district in Utah County just split, so it'll be a little bit higher. But states in the Midwest and in the East have significantly more school districts. And there's
Interesting.
something about the way we've organized ourselves that is less siloed. Now, we also have institutions and participate in institutions that are universally available in our country that silo us, like organizational and sectoral silos exist. And the incentives for people kind of going it alone, nonprofits, I can speak about maybe more definitively, like the nonprofit sector is siloed, and the incentives for nonprofits to compete with one another are pretty strong. The funding incentives and the narrative storytelling incentives to differentiate yourself to get funding. That exists everywhere. It exists in Utah. So even though we have some foundational strengths and we are a collaborative, problem-solving, awesome place, we have some things to get over if we really want to solve the problems that are in front of us. Again, the Gardner Policy Institute just released an analysis about the magnificent 7 elements of Utah that really strengthen us, and they released in comparison a troubling 7 list of things that we ought to use our strengths to solve these 7 troubling problems.
Right.
One of which is reading. We all ought to get on the same page about how to help every kid in Utah read on grade level. That's not a moonshot. That should be table stakes. We ought to be able to do that. And I think the way that the Promise Partnership and United Way have pulled people together to do that, I think is the pathway to 100% of kids reading on grade level.
That's great. When you, and talking a little bit, or maybe expanding on that a little bit, when you bring together the business leaders and the government agencies and nonprofits, what challenges do you see come up, right? That in those, with bringing kind of that whole industry and all the different sectors together.
Yeah, well, at
Because
the
I
very
think
beginning,
when you say like teaching them to read, I'm like, okay, my first 2 I sent to Challenger, they were reading by the time they were 4.
Yeah.
They were amazing, but why would what's their incentive to teach other schools or someone or that this community how to do that, how they do it successful when they earn money from it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step in this process is to just get people in the same room talking about a shared goal. Why should we all care that every child should read beyond an individual school's scores or business model, beyond the traditional role? Why should a mayor care about reading when their job is, trash pickup and potholes?
Yeah.
Why should a business leader at LSI care about reading. And there is an answer to every one of those. Like our shared interest in kids being successful has workforce development
Yep.
implications. It has crime implications for local government. It has, I think, relevance and operational success implications for schools, whether they're private or public schools. Like we all share in the future of the state, and if we don't solve some of these problems together, we all are harmed. That's, I think, the Gardner Policy Institute's point about the troubling seven. Like they are shared priorities for our state that we ought to take advantage of. Now, once you get people like talking about their shared purpose and their shared reason for being in the room together, then you have to, like, I think, get people using the same language. Even though we all are speaking English, for example, we might use words differently in the business
Absolutely.
world than the education world and the public sector. And we got to talk about impact and results with a common definition. And we've got to talk about what it means to align our efforts in a way. And then something the business world does really, really well, the healthcare sector, the manufacturing sector, practices continuous improvement in a way that has decades of science behind it, and doing that in a collaborative environment is more challenging. But that's the thing. I mean, that's all you have to do is get the sectors in a room, speaking the same, sharing a goal, speaking the same language, and practicing continuous improvement together. And you can see any needle move in the right direction. And if we do that well enough, with the right levers in place, the right policy environment and ecosystem in place, we can get to 100% of kids reading on grade level, 100% of kids graduating from high school on a career path of their choosing. And it's totally doable.
Absolutely. And I think for business leaders too, like you said, why would it matter to us? For us too, I mean, we're in an industry that they tell us by 2032 will only have 60% of the workforce that's needed, right? Your mechanics, your flight lines, your different things, like there's just no one educating them about it, right? STEM's such a huge, big push, which is great, but there's a lot of other things outside of STEM,
Yeah.
So I love all that. What role does data and shared accountability play in keeping these diverse partners aligned over long term?
Yeah. Well, it's critical. That's the first answer.
Yep.
Too often in the social sector and public sector world, data gets used as a hammer. It gets used to highlight a problem and kind of beat somebody up about it.
Yep.
In a cross-sector partnership, data gets used as a flashlight. In a continuous improvement process, you use data to find constraints and barriers and to resolve them. And if in a partnership you can get people using data as a flashlight in a continuous improvement cycle to look for where are things not working very well, which kids are not reading on grade level, what's their barrier, how do we solve that, did what we try worked? Well, no, let's try something else. Once data gets used as a flashlight and in a continuous improvement cycle, everything changes. It's one of the sad things I think about data in the nonprofit world is it's often only used to look backwards. It's only used to sort of prove
That you did.
that
Yeah.
we did something good. And what we need to use it to do is to improve what we are doing in the moment. And so all of the partnerships that we're describing use data in that way.
Yep. I love that analogy. The hammer or a flashlight, right? I think we do that at an individual level as well as even, departments, industries, etc. So what's one lesson you've learned from Utah's experience that other states or communities could apply to be as successful as Utah?
I think one lesson is that focusing everything in a place is like aligning everything and focusing it in a place is the transformation pathway. what we see a lot, not just here but elsewhere, is people will lock into a model, a single model, and think that that's the
End all be
only
all.
way. Like there's, there are in fact lots of words that get thrown around in our field about evidence-based practices and the idea that there's a silver bullet. Like once we find the one thing, that if we just did more of that, everything would be better. And our experience is there are like silver bullet programs, and there are excellent models, and there are evidence-based practices, but you got to do them all. Like you can't just do, a really good reading program and not care about math.
Anything else?
Yeah, you can't just do an early learning initiative and not care about what's happening to high schoolers. And so our approach, and this is not, I think, our unique insight. This is, lessons learned from other people around the country and from our own work here, is like combine everything that works, focus it in a place, pour gas on it, and prove that we can solve these problems. And then that will take hold, I think, and the ecosystem more broadly will start to change on its own.
That's great advice. Bill, what's one takeaway you would want listeners today to remember about education and cross-sector leadership?
Well, I would want listeners to see themselves as part of the team. I would want listeners to believe that their choices and contributions matter, that their volunteerism matters, that their financial donations matter, that how they show up in their kids' school matters. And I'd invite any listener to come to our website at uw.org and learn more about how to get involved.
That's great. And you kind of went into my next one, which is if they want to learn more about United Way of Salt Lake or support your work, they should go to uw.org. And then do you have a list of what you guys have coming up, what you have in need for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or what they can do to help around those types of events?
We do. On our website, there are multiple links to get involved. One of them is through volunteering. We have lists of projects and needs for drives and things like that as the holidays come up. And that's the hub of information.
Would you say volunteers are the number one thing you do need, or is in addition to donations and such?
Yeah, those are the two things that are the simplest way to make an impact.
Yep.
If you have time to volunteer, like please do. If you don't have the time, or if you do and you have the resources, that helps us move all of the work that we've been talking about forward. And if you have even more time and you want to sit down in a community and help build the infrastructure, that's the slower work. It's the system building work, but we'd love to hear from you too.
That's great. Thanks again for sharing your insights today with us and the incredible work you guys are doing at United Way of Salt Lake. I mean, I think I learned, even doing research before we sat down, I didn't know Clearfield, that's 5 minutes from Layton, where I live now, is one of those promised communities. So I think that's cool. And I think for our listeners, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Win. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for having me.